So this is my Pi project, which I did the security camera with the iCloud storage, and I'm Obi and Yo. So for the main business case, as I kind of said in my Pi proposal, I'm kind of new to the CIT. So I honestly, first of all, I didn't know much about a lot of this stuff. So, like, obviously, I know what a web camera is and like iCloud, but I didn't know like going into it and understanding how it worked, like how the file systems worked. I mean, I learned about the file systems, but I didn't know how to connect it to the cloud. So it really seemed interesting and something that I wanted to do, and it was also something I hadn't done or understood. So being able to use the Pi to be able to create these videos, connect the camera to the Pi, store it into my Pi, and then put it into a Google Drive so I can access it on my phone and computer was seemed really interesting to me. So I wanted to learn how to do that. And so for this project connection, there are many things that you can connect to the architecture. First of all, we learned about a lot about IP addresses and IP access, knowing like the connection between the two. One big thing I had to do was halfway through my code, my Pi was actually running a little slower, so I went into my Mac terminal and I accessed my Pi through my laptop using the IP address of the Pi to SSH into it. So that's one big thing that we need to use. We also obviously learned about inputs and outputs. So the camera that we bought for this project is an input device because um, you input the data into the camera and then it goes into the computer. Data is obviously like just like this camera, just recording me. Just some stuff like that. Output devices, obviously like I don't know why I can't think of any right now. But RAM and speed with the computer was another thing. I actually have the 2 gigabyte um, 2 gigabyte Pi. I noticed one of my friends was working on something similar. Mine was working slower because the RAM obviously leads, or the RAM is um, determines like how more RAM you have, the more gigabytes of RAM, the faster your computer will like execute, write, and read certain things. The faster the computer will essentially run. And so that's one thing that the Pi had. I wish I had more for like a further project, but since this is like my first time doing it, we chose like a smaller amount of RAM. Also, we obviously learned about the CPU and memory and how that intertwines to the SD card. We learned how like the CPU is like the brain, like the CPU of the Pi is like the brain of the Pi. It kind of stores a lot of the things, runs some things, and like keeps everything in check. Kind of like dealing with things like the file system, just running the Pi in general. And the SD card, at first I didn't really know what it did, but like obviously throughout being in the lab and learning in class, the SD card in this instance was to display the Pi and kind of like keep and store the data into the CPU and the memory. Also learned about operating systems. Obviously, like my computer, I have Mac OS. If I had a Windows computer, it'd be Windows. For the Pi, we use Linux, so that's really important. Determining, seeing which file system you're on because each of them are they're different but the same. Like they each have different ways you can like kind of access them. And so learning Linux was really interesting. Connecting them because I'd never used Linux before, so being able to point out similarities between Linux OS and Windows and learning about Linux helps me like with my project as I went through. And lastly, file systems. File systems are very important, especially in this project. You had to be able to save, download, like figure out how the terminal link to the file system, figure out like root directories, paths, all of that stuff. And those are really important, especially for saving a lot of the data in this project and transferring and all types of things.